another sip like fuck it, I'm gravy.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Awkward Situations, the series where you guys write comments about awkward situations you're experiencing in your lives, that you have experienced in your lives, embarrassing stories, or generally anything you want to talk about in the comment section below. And then I take a few of those comments and I talk about them in this series. We have some great awkward situations today, but before we get to those, we have an update on a previous awkward situation from last week's episode, a comment that I thought was very helpful to an awkward situation in last week's episode, and a general question from a commenter that I wanted to discuss. Before we get into the awkward situations, as always, if you want to skip around topics, I have the description below for your disposal with timestamp links to the previous awkward situations that are getting updates or comments, and the awkward situations and anything else we're talking about in this episode. The description is your friend if you want to hop around. The episode last week, it was not accurate because I went to a bar before I finished the description. I forgot about it. So I'm sorry about that, but this week, and hopefully in all the coming weeks, it will be accurate. Let's get into this first comment about a previous awkward situation that I thought was very helpful. So on last week's episode, Mama Drama, there was an awkward situation in which a boy discussed his problem trying to figure out if he wanted to take a scholarship at a school that was not necessarily near his home, or go to a local college that is closer to home, but he would not get a scholarship there. Why was that a difficult choice for him? Because his mother has him as a dependent, and she gets Social Security checks, disability, that's all she's living off of. And he feels the need to be there for his mother, as I believe any child who loves their parent would, but he's also torn because he knows that it is a good opportunity to get a scholarship. I'm dying. Okay. To get a scholarship to go to college. So I said that he should try to find a way to take the scholarship because it's not something many kids get offered, and hope his mother can find her way. I obviously explained it more eloquently than that, much longer. If you want to rewatch the situation, you can. But somebody made a helpful comment that I thought might be useful to this person if they're watching this episode as well. This person said, to the college kid and also Joel, the mother should still be able to claim you as a dependent if you live with her during the summer. I went out of state for a year and my parents could still claim me, so she should still get her money. Ask/tell her about that and see if you can't change her mind. So that's worth looking into. I also said it was worth looking into to see if you could get a scholarship at other local colleges, not just make this such a binary choice. There's usually wiggle room in these types of things. So I hope you had this situation figured out, man. And with that, we will get into the next update really quickly. Second update is in a response to another situation from last week in which a boy was talking about his bisexuality and how he wanted to come out and express his true self. He was worried about this just in general, being in high school. And then he's also on the wrestling team, which complicates things. He doesn't want his teammates to feel uncomfortable in the shower. I, in the episode, brought up just a general question of wondering why it's important for other people to understand and know the sexual nature of other people. It's important if you're going to engage in intimate sexual acts with other people to know where their feelings lie. But if I'm just eating a McChicken with someone at McDonald's, I don't need to know what the guy at the cash register likes to do in his private life. I don't know. So that was just my thoughts on the whole scenario, and he elaborated, which I really appreciated. Update/response. Thank you so much, Joel, for responding to my comment. I've been a fan for years, and it's cool to hear from you on this subject. Now, to address some things you said, my idea of coming out to people is, quote-unquote, not hiding it anymore. I don't want to have to lie or put on the straight show for people. Obviously, I wouldn't go around telling people randomly, but I feel like I'm missing out on the completely 100% me that I could be. Now, I will say that I could be totally wrong, that I would act no different or say anything different if everyone knew I was bisexual. But I want to know that for sure. So I guess to clear that part up, and as for the wrestling and the locker room, I'm just more afraid that I will make everyone uncomfortable, more so in the showers than wrestling. And I don't know how to get them to see that I respect their privacy and don't look at them in that way and just act like a regular dude in the locker room and the mat room. You don't have to do an update or anything. I just want to clear some stuff up. Again, love you, Daddy Joel, and not like that. You're the best, and I've always loved you in the crew since middle school. You're my favorite YouTuber by far, so keep it up. I know this person said I didn't have to do an update, but I thought it was important to do an update because it answered a question I had about why this would be important to an individual to come out and what coming out meant to specific individuals. And his idea of coming out is kind of my idea of coming out. You're not walking around randomly saying what you're interested in, But if the topic is brought up and you are questioned, it's not something you're going to be dishonest about. And I think that's totally fair. You shouldn't have to be dishonest about your private life. If you don't want to share it, that's one thing. If you could say, I'd rather not share, that's something you could talk about. But if you feel like being open and honest, I think you should always be open and honest and deal with the consequences. If you're starting to feel like you're making your teammates uncomfortable, this is becoming something that's more known around the school, then you could just say, hey, when you guys are taking a shower, I'll wait 5-10 minutes. I'll give you guys a buffer period. It was actually really convenient at my high school. I know this is not the situation at most high schools, but my high school had this huge multi-million-dollar update before I got into high school for all of the athletic facilities, and then they built some math and science labs, which I was very thankful to the people of my town for voting for that, because it made my high school experience very great. Not for this reason, for the mostly learning reasons, but the athletic facilities were bomb, and the showers had individual stalls. So this isn't something you would even have to worry about. But if you want to respect your teammates' privacy and make them feel more comfortable, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, hey, maybe I'll just take a shower a little bit after you guys. You could just sit in your locker and lag a little bit behind. I don't feel like you should have to do that. And again, as a reasonable adult, I know that if I'm showering at the gym, there may or may not be people in the locker room that have certain feelings about my penis, but I don't really care, because in a normal, civilized society, you don't just go around grabbing people's private parts. We've seen in the news lately that may not be the norm anymore, but I think everyone that is in a normal, rational mind that respects the bodies of other people would not be worrying about what other people are thinking about their bodies or having to feel unsafe. Either you having to feel unsafe as someone who is openly bisexual, or your teammates having to feel unsafe being around someone who is openly bisexual. I think it just should be something that we're all comfortable with. I understand that's not always the case. Maybe I'm looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, but I think you could figure this out, and I just want you to be honest with yourself, and I really appreciate that update. One more quick I made that noise with my hands, I'm sorry. One more quick comment before we get into today's awkward situations. Hey Joel, just a quick recommendation on the series. I don't know how many other people feel this way, but I'm just putting it out there. If you were to turn awkward situations into a podcast, I think it would really benefit you financially. I'm not saying you need it, just saying this is an opportunity to make some extra dollars. As you said in the video, a lot of people just seem to be listening to the video instead of watching it. I am also one of those individuals. Turning the series into a podcast would make it easier for those people to listen, since YouTube forces you to buy YouTube Red when you want to listen to a video with the app closed. Not to mention, you could potentially reach a completely new audience. I think if you had a format similar to the H3 podcast, it would be great. They basically record the podcast and film themselves recording it, and then they put the video on YouTube and the podcast on iTunes. If anyone else feels the same way, like or comment for suggestions. I will say, this person got no likes or comments on this comment, but I chose it anyway because I thought it was an interesting question. And a lot of the comments on awkward situations, not a lot, but I would say around 15% of the comments on awkward situations get caught up in the YouTube spam filter that I have on my comments, whether it's for blacklist or generally lengthy comments will get put into the spam filter automatically. So I thought this was an interesting suggestion. It's something we've dabbled with in the past on this series, just recording awkward situations with no gameplay. And I felt a little uncomfortable with it. I feel like people like having the gameplay, but this is an interesting point. I could double dip on the series if I were to also put it on iTunes. And I could still put it on my channel with the gameplay in the background, but then I could also put it on iTunes and just be conscious of the fact that I'm putting it on iTunes and not rely so much on visual things in the Awkward Situations series, which I don't, but I do on occasion. I don't do it too often, but on occasion I'll make some type of visual joke or something. So I could be double dipping, having a podcast with sponsored reads in between, and having a YouTube series with advertisements in between. That might be something worth looking into. It's never been framed for me in this context. I am a fan of the H3 podcast, but if you guys are interested in that, let me know. I do think that is an interesting idea. I had another comment on the last episode saying I watch YouTube videos without ad block to support creators, but if you're going to put this many ads on the episode, Joel, I really don't want to watch. And I did think that was an interesting point. I'm still going to put a decent amount of ads on Awkward Situations episodes and a lot of my videos, but I want to get back to being more conscious about where I'm putting the ads. I don't want to cut myself off in the middle of reading an awkward situation, so I appreciate all of this feedback. Definitely things worth thinking about. If I could expand my audience in any way, that's probably the biggest downfall with my YouTube channel right now. I have a loyal and awesome viewer base, but it's not necessarily growing. So something to think about for sure. I have other podcast ideas also that I've gotten in the past couple of days I'm really excited about. That's things to talk about for another time. Let's get into today's awkward situations right now. Today's first awkward situation says, hey Joel, I have a situation that I have no idea how to handle. The other day I was driving to school. I was angry from an argument the night before with this guy that I'm no longer friends with, because although we aren't friends to this day, he still talks to my mom. What the fuck? And he came over to bring her flowers since she recently had her knee replaced. My mom bitches at me for not wanting to be friends with him, even though he treated me poorly. The argument with him and her happened when we had family in town and I didn't get to spend time with them the night before they left. I am also really stressed out from school. This is so long, but I do appreciate, I love the comments that are like, Joel, you ask for context in your awkward situations, but then you complain when they're long. There's no perfect middle ground with this guy. Anyways, I'm also stressed out from school. So I was driving to school and I was on the road with no traffic. The speed limit was 30 miles per hour, but I was pushing 60. I was pulled over by an officer on a bike who was hiding around a corner. He wrote me a reckless driving ticket. I have a mandatory court date for December 4th, Jay-Z's birthday. I'm afraid of what could happen. Fines could be $250 to $1,000 and possibly up to 6 months in jail. I don't know if I should tell my parents, get a lawyer, ask a family friend for help, or if I should just handle it myself and ask the judge to go easy on me because it is my first driving offense and to give me a fine and driving school. I don't want to tell my parents and ask them for help because my mom will yell at me and tell me I'm a failure, might be abusive, or will want to kick me out. I don't have a job to pay the fines right now as I'm a college student. Everyone is going to judge me because of a few moments of shitty feelings getting in my head and me not thinking clearly. I'm not a bad person. I made a mistake. What do I do? TLDR. Oh, I could have just read that. Okay, well, whatever. Thanks for any insight. Interesting thing you said in this comment. Everyone is going to judge me because of a few moments of shitty feelings getting to my head and me not thinking clearly. Unfortunately, it sounds like you are still not thinking clearly. Let's weigh this out in a percentage chance-based scenario. Let's statistically talk about this. You got pulled over for reckless driving, and your court date is on December 4th. That is, how long away is that? That is a little over a month away. I'm looking at my calendar. I don't know how in that 1 month period your parents are not going to find out that you are going to court for a reckless driving charge, whether it be through a letter to your house from your state saying you have to show up in court, your insurance rate spiking next month from getting points on your driver's license, and your father questioning you as to why the insurance rates went up, or your mother questioning you, whatever it would be. Or just any other way that they would find out that you have to go to court for reckless driving other than you telling them, which, by the way, would be the best way for them to find out. Put yourself in the shoes of a parent, which might be hard to do. It's easier for me because I'm closer to a parent age now than a child age. But if my child got in trouble for something like this, I would want to find out from them. Would I still be upset? Yes. Would I be doubly upset, if I could use that word, if that's even a word, if I found out from another source other than my child that they got into legal trouble? Yes, because I would know they were hiding it from me, and that would make it worse. As they say, it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. So if there's some miracle chance that you can not tell your parents, not have them find out, hire a lawyer yourself, or teach yourself to be a lawyer by reading books in a library and having some awesome come-from-behind story where you beat the man and beat the government, that chance is extremely small, if there is a chance. It's probably 99.9% chance that you either have some problem in court and you make it worse, or hiring a lawyer is expensive, or your parents find out beforehand. The percentage of all those things happening, or at least one of them happening, is very high. The percentage of chance of you getting through this without help from adults is very low. So I would say to tell your parents before this gets any worse. Tell them as soon as possible. Are they going to be upset? Of course. They will be more upset if they find out any other way that you have been pulled over for reckless driving. And if you tell them beforehand, you will get a chance to explain your reasoning. If they find out from another source and come to you and talk to you about this, then it sounds like you're making excuses. I guess you're still making excuses if you tell them beforehand, but I could just picture a scenario in which you're telling them first and then you're saying, this is why it happened, this is what I learned, I know I was wrong. You want to be proactive about this. This is one of my favorite things that MSU basketball coach Tom Izzo says. He wants to be proactive rather than defensive about not just as a scheme in basketball, but in life. He's trying to teach his players to be proactive it's not proactive rather than defensive. It's proactive rather than reactive. I don't even know what he's talking about. In my small YouTuber brain, I can't even figure out the quote. There was another one last week where I said, what is it, guys? The harder you hold on to something, the easier it is to let go. And some people in the comments were like, it's the harder you hold on to something, the harder it is to let it go, Joel, you moron. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't even know if that quote applies to what I was talking about. But Tom Izzo says he wants to be proactive rather than reactive and teach his players to follow that philosophy in life in general. So you want to be proactive in this situation rather than reactive and get help. It's something that feels like the worst thing in the world right now, but I promise time heals all wounds. If I could give a scenario that's like this in my own life that I experienced secondhand, my sister threw a banger of a party at our house maybe 4 or 5 years ago when she was 18, 19. I don't know if she was still in high school. I can't remember. I was just starting out on YouTube. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. My younger brother and I never threw any bangers, but my sister decided to for whatever reason. So she throws this party. She's 18, feels like she knows everything, and stuff goes wrong. Way too many people show up to the house, as it always happens. Stuff gets broken, stuff gets stolen. This is all while my parents are on vacation, trying to relax. One of the few vacations they take during a year, and this all happens, and it's terrible. So they come home, and they're obviously very upset. I remember at my time, my sister being devastated, one, because these things got stolen, and some of the things that were stolen were eventually found, and I believe the people went to court. I don't really know. I think they were returned anonymously, actually. So there was no justice, but the items were returned. So that was one of the reasons she was devastated. But she was also devastated because she felt like her family, us, and particularly my parents, our parents, were going to hate her forever because of what she did. Forever is a very long time. And it's something that we can laugh and joke about as a family 4 years later, however long it's been. It didn't even take that long. I mean, we were joking about it the next summer. But just know it's hard for you to see this when you're in the scenario. Forever is a long time. You feel like this is going to be terrible. You're hyping it up in your head to be worse than it actually is. Maybe some of these repercussions will happen, but I promise the repercussions will be worse if your parents don't hear it from you. So I hope you can find a way to tell them, explain your reasoning, hope they're reasonable. If they're not, learn your lesson, learn how to not do that as a parent. When you have kids and they screw up, say, you know what, the way my parents treated me was shit. I'm going to remember to not do that to my kids when they get older. It'll feel like a huge weight off your shoulders regardless of what your parents do, as long as you open up to them and tell them, and then they can help you. That's what adults are for in a family, to help in scenarios like this. I've had friends that have gone through scenarios like this. That's what adults are for. You need to talk with them and get the situation figured out. I hope you can handle it. An update on this situation would be great. Let's go to the next awkward situation right now. Hey Joel, my situation isn't really awkward, but I just need advice, and it's kind of similar to the 14-year-old job advice, which is from last episode. I will link the timestamp for when I talked about that in last episode if you want more context. But I am a sophomore in high school, and I'm currently trying out for the basketball team, and I am very pessimistic, which brings me down a lot of time, but I work my way through life, LOL, as we all do, and have a feeling I won't make the team. And so I was talking to some of my friends, and I was wondering whether to keep working on my game, as the cool kids say, as much as I can to maybe even become an NBA player, as silly as that is, or to get a job and have a couple of extra bucks for stuff I want from time to time. And I will turn 16 on December 29th. Happy early birthday. And I'm not very worried for my grades, as I am an AB student, so I don't know what to do. Thanks. Love you, Joel. Gonna make this one much quicker than the last one. You will be working for the rest of your life. You will not be able to play sports for the rest of your life. If you truly don't have a passion for sports and you feel you're not going to be interested in them and you're not going to miss them, then by all means get a job, especially if you feel like you can balance it. But this one really hit me in the feels because I miss organized sports in school so much. And I know all of my friends do. I went to a wedding with some of my high school friends that I don't get to see that often a couple of weekends ago, and we just talked about high school sports and all the old glory days and all that stuff. And you can tell we all miss it so much. And actually, you can tell that other parents in the stands miss high school sports when they try to live out their high school sports experience through their children. So if you really don't feel like you're going to miss it, you can get a job, but you will be working for the rest of your life. Hopefully not the rest of your life. Hopefully you'll get to retire someday, but a lot of the rest of your life. And you won't have this opportunity to play organized sports, and maybe your body won't be able to play organized sports for the rest of your life. So I would keep playing basketball. Do it for me. But it's your choice. It's your life, you know. So that's my advice if you wanted it. Next awkward situation. Hey, Joel. So I had a recent situation come up for me. Last year for high school, I had relations with the secretary in my school, dating and sexual. She was 30 and I was 20. She had recently ran into my dad and he asked for her number. She said yes. I found out by her texting me and told me not to tell him so it don't make things awkward with things. The moment might come where I have to bring it up to tell him that she was my ex and don't know how to do so. If you can give advice, if it comes to that, that would be great. Thanks. And I never do this, but I want to give the replies to this situation as well because it gives a little more context for the situation. Someone said, not much you can do here. When the time comes, just tell your dad that you guys were dating. Another commenter said, damn, this is the definition, or rather, that is the definition of an awkward situation, which is why I chose it. This is an incredibly awkward situation. Another commenter said, wait. You graduated at 20 years old. And these last two are from the original commenter. He replied to the one who said you graduated at 20 years old by saying, I was messing up and didn't want to go to school and went back to 2 years and finished it. And then he didn't reply to anyone. He just in general gave more context and said they started talking because a teacher got a DUI, LOL, and she needed to get her out. The secretary needed to get the teacher out. Long story short, my dad works at the jail she was at, and she was getting help from him. He threw down a smooth game, I guess, and got her number. So she said, don't say anything so it ain't awkward. Don't know where to go if she shows up to my house or anything. This situation is incredibly awkward, and it reminds me of a scene from one of my favorite, if not my favorite, television shows of all time, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Watched every episode multiple times growing up. My favorite sitcom of all time, for sure. There's this scene in which Will is picturing, I can't even remember the context of the scene, but it's a flashback or flash forward sequence rather, where he's picturing this future in which his Uncle Phil becomes this player of sorts without being married. I think the situation was Uncle Phil was having marital problems with the Aunt Vivian, who are Will's legal guardians, quasi-parents, and he was picturing a scenario in which they become divorced and Uncle Phil becomes a player and steals his women. If I can find it on YouTube, I'll link the clip in the description if you guys want to see it or if you care. But that's what I was thinking of as I read this comment. As for what you would do in this situation, not one I can draw personal experience from. Don't have the answer for this one in my personal history. I didn't have any young secretaries at my school. It's not a teacher. So it doesn't make the situation, well, the ages don't make the situation illegal, but it definitely makes it awkward. It's kind of weird that she knew that you were the guy's son. I guess, I don't know if she knew afterwards, but she texted you like, hey, your dad's pretty smooth. I think I want to be with him now, but don't tell him about us. That's a very weird scenario. I've heard of friends dating other friends as exes before, and that creates an awkward scenario. It's another thing when you're like, you know what, I'm done with the son, but how about that dad dick though? How's that dad doing? And I'm sorry, I don't want to joke about this if this is a, this is why I'm not a psychologist. I don't know if you take offense to what I said, but it just is really blowing my mind what this secretary is doing. She should be stapling papers and taking down notes of absences, not running through the list of people in the school and saying, who and their dad can I have sex with? You know? And okay, I need to stop joking about it and take it so lightly. I guess in this scenario, I would see how it plays out. My mom had this phrase, and it's not like she invented it, but she would say, play things by ear. You got to feel this one out. If your dad's seeming to really like this girl, you might want to let him know before things get too out of hand. The timing on this one is important. And I don't believe there's any perfect timing, but there's worse timing. You don't want to be at the altar with your dad, his best man, and whisper into his ear as she's walking down the aisle, hey, Dad, I fucked her. But then, if it's going to turn out to be nothing anyway, you don't want to, not jeopardize would be the word. I don't think you can ever jeopardize a relationship with a parent. You'd have to really do some serious things to jeopardize your relationship with your parent. But you don't want to dampen your relationship with your parent by just cutting this off early by yourself. Like, just, it might turn into nothing. A lot of relationships turn into nothing. He just got her number. It's not even a relationship. I shouldn't frame it that way. Really, this is one of the more difficult things I've ever had to talk about. Again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor. Don't really know what I would do here. But I think the best advice would be to feel it out, see where things are going with him and her. If she's texting you, she could give more insight to the situation. I have no idea where her head's at, if she's aware of this situation and totally cool with talking to your father. I think that friends should be really careful dating the ex-girlfriends of other friends. But even more than that, dating a relative's ex is worse because you're blood related to that person. Friends come and go over time. I'm always going to be blood related to the people I'm blood related to. That's a stronger bond than a friendship. So you want to be more careful with that bond. I hope you can feel this out. I would love an update to this one because this is something that should be on the Dr. Phil show almost. And you might even want to hit up old Doc Phil and see, hey, is this one for you? I don't know. I don't want to make a big light show of it, but this is crazy. So I hope you can get that figured out. Feel it out. Let me know how it goes. Last awkward situation says, hey, Joel, longtime fan. This is a more pressing situation that is currently unfolding, so I'm going to need some instantaneous advice. I'm 21 years old and have been dating my girlfriend for 8 years since middle school and absolutely adore her and her family. I've spent more time with them than my own, and they all love and speak highly of me too. A month ago, one of her brothers was hit by a drunk driver who ran a red light at 75 miles per hour and hit him directly on his door. He was rushed to the hospital with multiple life-threatening injuries and was expected to die the following days, but insisted his body put him in a deep coma. We are glad he isn't dead, but after a month of still being in this coma with such severe brain trauma, we are uncertain if he will ever wake up. Even if he does, he will likely suffer from a multitude of physical and neurological issues. He is one of my good friends, and this has totally fucked us all up mentally, as he was one of the nicest people I've ever known. After being at the hospital daily, starting a GoFundMe, and being there for my girlfriend and her family, we have all hit an emotional wall, quote unquote. The situation I need assistance with is situation timing. I was planning on proposing to my girlfriend the day of his accident, but postponed the idea due to our emotional distress and the fact that none of us, including her family, would be able to celebrate. Should I bite the bullet now and do it, even though I know nobody will react the same, or should I wait until he hopefully wakes up and do it when everybody has something to be happy about? I'm torn because I want to do it so bad, but don't want to be seen as inconsiderate or brash in such an extreme and emotional time. Thanks for reading. Any other thoughts would be greatly appreciated. This is a scenario I've dealt with in my own personal life. I haven't talked about it in too much detail. I'll go into a little more detail today, maybe, but hopefully it will help you out. I will say that in my scenario, the best possible outcome was achieved, and we don't know what the outcome is going to be. In your scenario, we can be hopeful, but yours is going to be a little more unanswered than mine is at the time. I'll share my own story. So 5 years ago, Megan's nephew was born, my nephew now that we're married, and he's always grown up knowing me as his uncle, but he was born 5 years ago. We are very close to her brother and sister-in-law, and now my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law, very close to them, and hang out with them multiple times a week. So when he was first born, my nephew, he had a lot of health problems, and there were some very stressful times around that time, not knowing what his future was going to be like, if he was going to, to be honest, if he was going to live. He had to have 2 heart surgeries before he turned 1 year old, which is very difficult on a family and on a child. Like I said, the best possible scenario was achieved. He has had a very healthy childhood other than that start of his life, and it was thought that he was going to have more heart surgeries before he turned 5, and he hasn't had to have a surgery since those ones as a child. He's a very healthy young child. So you already know the end of the story, but at that time, it was very stressful. Megan was trying to finish college. I was just starting to gain some momentum on YouTube. I think it was going into my most successful year on YouTube, kind of the start of it, which I've said before, my most successful statistical year on YouTube was one of my roughest years on YouTube, just personally, in my personal life. And one of the factors was just trying to figure out where Megan and I were at in our relationship and a situation like this happening. So it turns out that he makes it through the scenario. And I found that one of my motivating factors for wanting to get married to Megan, I didn't have the plans to get engaged to her at the time. But when I came around to thinking about wanting to get engaged 2 years later, one of the things I thought was about how much I loved her family and how much I wanted to be a part of her family and be able to officially call myself my nephew's uncle, if that makes sense. So we found that over time, it brought us closer together, and it's one of the motivating factors in me wanting to get engaged and wanting to start a family with Megan, to be a part of her family and to have children that are a part of both of us. I think, that there's a lot of other people that have similar motivating factors for wanting to get engaged, and it turned out to be one of the motivating factors in this scenario. I don't know how this is going to end. We can all hope for the best. We can all pray for the best for her brother and your potential future brother-in-law. Got a notification, by the way, that my Amazon order has shipped. In case you guys were wondering when my paper towels were going to get here, they're going to be here tomorrow. Or 2 days from now, actually, it looks like. Great little break in the emotional distress here. But getting back to it, we don't know how this is going to end. What I would say is that you should keep holding off from getting engaged to your sister until there's a little more closure, until we're a little farther removed from the incident. I think it would be good for both of you, for her to have a more clear mind. No matter what happens, this is always going to be a part of your lives, a part of especially her life and her parents' life. But I think you can find the emotional intelligence within yourself to know when it will be a good time to get engaged in something that, when you do get engaged, it will be something that the family can rally around and it can be a celebratory moment. But I think if you even have to ask the question, you probably know that it is not the time. I'm sorry this happened to you. It ruined a lot of things, this incident. And if you're ever even buzzed, in today's day and age, Uber is everywhere. Lyft is almost everywhere. Uber and Lyft are almost everywhere. Why the fuck would you drunk drive? When we even are questioning it nowadays, and I'm not going to say I haven't drove buzzed. It's a very complicated thing to say. I'm not going to act like I'm a saint. But especially in today's day and age, drunk driving is so stupid. And it's one of the reasons I'm hoping for autonomous cars sooner rather than later, because morons can just ruin someone else's life, ruin their own lives, and then ruin the lives of an innocent bystander. One of the things I hate most about this world, there is no sense in some things. People die senselessly. Las Vegas, the shooting, other shootings, a senseless loss of life. It leaves you grasping for answers as to why these things happen. It has to be the most difficult emotional situation to deal with. I don't know of anyone in my family that I can think of right now that has died senselessly, but I could not imagine the pain that her family and that you are experiencing. You saying you were close to him, which I understand. I'm very close to my brothers-in-law. Even before I was married to Megan, I consider them to be great friends. So I can relate to you in that sense. You're just going to have to use your own judge of when it would be best to get engaged. If that means delaying it a year and then telling her afterwards, I wanted to get engaged. Well, would you want to tell her? I don't know. I don't want to put too many words in your mouth. I think you'll be able to judge and just find the best time to know when her family is ready, when she is ready. And I really think it's going to bring you closer together. If you want to look at the one silver lining, if you know you can get through the bad times with your spouse, your future spouse, that's a good thing to know before you get married. And it's something that I knew before I got married to Megan because of what we experienced. I hope you can have a similar experience and a similar positive outcome. But whatever happens, hoping for the best for you, man. And thank you for leaving this comment. Thanks again to everyone for watching this episode of Awkward Situations. I hope you all enjoyed. And until next week, Have a good one.
Fuck it, I'm gravy. Hit another leg by the will of God's graces. Made another hit with the people I came with. I ain't met another click speaking.